And you're purdy. Y bailan el flamenco.
Chris Farley predicted his own death, and no one could stop it. Chris Farley worshipped John Belushi. He studied every sketch, every move, every wild moment of his comedy hero's life. But his obsession took a dark turn. Both died at exactly 33 years old. Both were from a drug overdose. Both were found alone. Chris even told friends years before, "I'm going to end up just like Belushi." And despite desperate interventions and tearful pleas, that's exactly what happened. But why? Why couldn't Chris break free from this deadly pattern, even when he saw it coming? What was the secret he carried that sealed his fate? This is the haunting story of how a superfan became a mirror image of his hero, right down to the devastating final chapter. Stay with me, because what you're about to discover will change everything. Long before the world knew his name, Chris Farley came into it on a cold February day in 1964 in the quiet lakeside village of Maple Bluff, Wisconsin. Even as a boy, he carried more weight than most, not just physically, but emotionally. The cruelty of childhood can be relentless, and for Farley, schoolyard taunts became a daily reality. Yet somewhere in that pain, a gift quietly took root. He learned that laughter could disarm almost anything. At Marquette University, he discovered that his size, once a source of shame, could be a strength. On the rugby field, he was formidable. In the classroom, he pursued communications and theater with equal passion. But it was the raw, unscripted world of improvisational comedy in Madison that truly awakened something in him. Chicago called next, as it does for so many dreamers chasing the art of making people laugh. He cut his teeth at I.O. Theater and climbed the ranks at Second City, that hallowed stage where legends are quietly forged. Like countless performers before him, Farley waited, hopeful, hungry, for the moment Lorne Michaels might turn his gaze in his direction. That one glance everyone knew could change everything. When Lorne Michaels finally turned that legendary gaze toward Farley in 1990, everything shifted. The boy from Maple Bluff was bound for New York City, and Saturday Night Live would never quite be the same. Among the many characters Farley breathed life into on that iconic stage, none resonated quite like Matt Foley, a wildly caffeinated, perpetually disheveled motivational speaker teetering always on the edge of complete collapse. The character was electric, but it was one unrehearsed moment that etched Foley into television history. Mid-sketch, with David Spade and Christina Applegate seated across from him under the unforgiving glare of live cameras, Farley launched himself through the air and crashed onto the coffee table before them. Their shock was unscripted and utterly real. The audience erupted. In that single chaotic moment, Farley announced himself to the world. By 1995, Hollywood had come calling. Farley and his close friend David Spade signed on for Tommy Boy, a film that would demand everything from both of them. The two juggled a bruising schedule, rehearsing and performing SNL each week while commuting to Toronto to shoot the film. The pressure quietly accumulated beneath the surface of Farley's larger-than-life exterior. One evening, Spade slipped out with actor Rob Lowe, leaving Farley behind under the pretense of illness. When Farley discovered the truth, something in him snapped. The following day on set, he stormed toward Spade, who sat unsuspecting on the ground eating lunch, and deliberately stomped on his hand. What followed was a full physical confrontation that left Spade sprawled at the bottom of a staircase. Yet as volatile as those moments were, they never lasted. Every explosion between the two men dissolved eventually into something quieter and warmer, a reconciliation that spoke to a bond far deeper than any argument. Looking back, those clashes feel less like conflict and more like the desperate flailing of a man carrying far too much weight in every sense of the word.
I showed you what these guns could do in the Middle East. Now I'm gonna show what they can do in the ring. This summer, Atlantic City.
Beneath the laughter, something more complicated was unfolding. During the filming of Tommy Boy, Farley was attempting sobriety, abstaining from the substances that had already begun to shadow his life. Yet in their place came coffee, consumed in almost mythological quantities. Accounts suggest he put away as many as 27 cappuccinos a day, a detail that feels both absurdly funny and quietly heartbreaking in hindsight. Matt Foley, it turns out, wasn't entirely fictional. Despite his relentless schedule, Farley refused to let stunt performers take his place on set. Every tumble, every crash, every spectacular faceplant, including a memorable one at a fraternity party, was entirely his own doing. Remarkably, he walked away from most of them unscathed, seemingly defying both gravity and common sense in equal measure. When Tommy Boy became a surprise box office success, Farley found himself standing at the threshold of something bigger. Hollywood was paying attention, and for a brief, glittering moment, the future looked wide open. Back at SNL, Farley had gravitated toward a circle of equally untamed spirits, Chris Rock, Adam Sandler, and Tim Meadows among them. Together, they earned the unofficial title of the Bad Boys of SNL, a reputation built on late-night prank calls, juvenile mischief, and a shared gift for chaos that somehow never stopped being charming. But not everything could be laughed off. One night in a hotel room 15 floors above the street, a reckless evening took a terrifying turn. Drunk and dangerously unsteady, Farley came perilously close to falling through a window. He survived, but not without consequence. A deep wound running from his wrist to his elbow and, far more damaging, an introduction to painkillers that would quietly begin to consume him. By 1995, the party at NBC was officially over. Whatever tolerance the network's executives had once extended to Farley and Adam Sandler had finally run dry. Their off-screen behavior, chaotic, relentless, and impossible to manage, had pushed the studio past its breaking point. Both men were let go. For anyone else, it might have felt like a devastating blow. For Farley, cushioned by the unexpected triumph of Tommy Boy, it was more of an inconvenience than a catastrophe. Hollywood still wanted him, and Paramount had already locked him into a follow-up with David Spade, a film that would become Black Sheep. But Farley had other ideas. His eyes had drifted toward a script at rival Columbia Pictures, a dark, strange comedy called The Cable Guy, and he wanted it badly. There was just one problem. Paramount was holding him to his contract, even though, in a detail almost too chaotic to believe, they didn't yet have a finished script for Black Sheep. Studio executives were frantically racing to get words on paper before Farley could find a legal exit. Then, Jim Carrey entered the picture, and everything changed. Carrey had caught wind of the Cable Guy script and expressed his interest. Farley was a rising star, but Carrey was something else entirely, a phenomenon unto himself. The role slipped away almost instantly. To make the sting considerably worse, Carrey walked away with a staggering $20 million payday, while Farley found himself back on set with Spade, contractually bound and earning a fraction of that sum. The tensions behind the scenes of Black Sheep simmered from the very beginning. Farley had hoped for Tommy Boy director Peter Siegel to return to the helm, but Siegel passed. Instead, Penelope Spheris, known for directing Wayne's World, stepped in, and the atmosphere grew difficult almost immediately. Spade grew visibly frustrated, feeling increasingly sidelined as the camera seemed to favor Farley at every turn. He wasn't wrong. Spheris made little secret of the fact that she found Farley the more compelling performer. And somewhere in the middle of all that friction, Farley himself had arrived at a quiet but significant realization, one that David Spade was not going to enjoy hearing. Midway through filming Black Sheep, something shifted in Farley. The man who had built his career on physical comedy and unbridled chaos was quietly harboring a different ambition. He wanted to act, really act. Fewer pratfalls, more substance. Fewer scenes with Spade, more meaningful moments with co-star Tim Matheson. The desire was genuine, but the way Farley chose to express it was breathtaking in its audacity. He approached Spade with an offer to pay him to simply disappear from the film entirely. It was the kind of proposal only Farley could make, simultaneously outrageous and oddly sincere. But money wasn't the only thing fracturing their friendship. The roots of the tension ran deeper and more personally. During the production of Tommy Boy, Spade had befriended an actress named Lori Bagley and had developed real feelings for her. In a moment of misplaced generosity, he introduced her to Farley. The two connected immediately, slipping into a relationship they then chose to keep hidden from Spade. When the truth eventually surfaced, it landed hard. Some wounds, no matter how much laughter surrounds them, don't heal quickly. Through all of it, Farley poured himself into Black Sheep without reservation. No stunt double, no shortcuts, including a punishing tumble down a hillside that he performed himself. Yet the film failed to capture the magic of Tommy Boy, and its lukewarm reception hit Farley in a place he couldn't easily defend. At a preview screening, after 6 months of hard-won sobriety, he took a drink. One became many, and the road led back to rehabilitation once more. When Beverly Hills Ninja came along, Farley approached it with uncharacteristic hesitation. He had one firm condition before signing on. His friend and fellow SNL alumnus, Chris Rock, had to be part of it. Even then, the laughter was beginning to cost him more than anyone watching could see. Something quietly changed in Farley during the making of Black Sheep. Beneath the crashes and the chaos lived a man with a genuine longing to be taken seriously as a performer. He grew restless with the formula, craving depth over destruction, real emotion over easy laughs. That restlessness manifested in a proposal so brazen it could only have come from him. He offered Spade money to walk away from the film altogether. Outrageous, yes, but there was a strange sincerity buried inside it that was unmistakably Farley. Yet the fractures between the two men ran far deeper than any contract dispute. On the 14th of December, after a period of hard-won sobriety, the darkness rushed back in. Farley spent his final hours in his apartment, the evening unraveling in the company of a woman he had paid to be there. What followed was a portrait of loneliness so acute that it is difficult to sit with even now. She stole his watch. She photographed him in his most vulnerable state. And when he spoke his last known words to her, "Don't leave me," she left anyway. She was the last person to see Chris Farley alive. It was his brother who found him. The cause was an overdose, and the comedy world, blindsided and bereft, went into mourning. At his funeral, the faces of those who loved him told the whole story. Adam Sandler, Chris Rock, Phil Hartman, and many others who had shared stages and dressing rooms and late nights with him. But one face was absent. David Spade, his closest friend and most frequent collaborator, did not come. Speculation swirled as it always does. Spade later offered his own quiet explanation, that attending would simply have been more than he could bear. Perhaps that, more than anything, speaks to the depth of what they had shared beneath all the noise. Observers have long noted the haunting parallels between Farley's life and that of John Belushi, another SNL force of nature, another larger-than-life talent consumed too soon, at the same age, under eerily similar circumstances. The resemblance disturbed those who had known Belushi personally. Bill Murray, who had been close to Belushi, reportedly found Farley's trajectory so painfully familiar that it bred a particular kind of resentment. Some likenesses feel less like a coincidence and more like a cruel echo. What makes it all the more devastating is that Farley knew. He was aware of Belushi's struggles, aware that substance use had contributed to his idol's decline. And yet, by his own admission, that knowledge drew him toward the same path rather than away from it. He believed the chaos made Belushi funnier. He wanted that same combustible energy for himself. In his final 2 years, Farley attempted to break free at least 17 times, cycling through rehabilitation programs, weight loss facilities, and recovery meetings with a desperation that speaks to how hard he was truly fighting. But at the core of every failed attempt was a belief he could never fully shake. That his size, his mania, his wildness were not symptoms to be treated, but ingredients to be preserved. He was terrified that without them, he simply would not be funny. And that fear, quiet and immovable, outlasted every effort to save him. In the end, it wasn't just addiction that took Chris Farley. It was the cruel lie he had told himself since childhood, that he was only worth loving when he made people laugh.